Today we're going to talk about Pac-Man, one of the most recognizable characters in video game history. Almost everybody knows this yellow chomper that eats dots and chases away ghosts. The game was a hit in the 1980s, but despite the game's popularity, there are a few little facts and quirks that I think that most casual players don't know. In fact, for the longest time, I kind of took Pac-Man at face value and would just, if I'm at an arcade and I see Pac-Man, I'm just going to head over and play a few games. Inevitably, I'm going to lose, and then you walk away and you go find the next game. But yeah, I think a lot of people see the game at this surface level. But today, we're going to take a look at what's going on behind the scenes. Now, a brief history on the creation of Pac-Man. Back in 1979, there was this 24-year-old game developer named Toru Iwatani. He was working at Namco, and he began development on what would ultimately become Pac-Man. Now, despite the reputation of arcades today, back at that time, arcades were kind of seen as these shady places to hang out. And Iwatani felt that most of the games were geared more towards men and were violent and had crude graphics. So what Iwatani sought to do was to create a game that was non-violent, bright, colorful, and cheery, and that would attract both men and women and hopefully create more of a family-friendly atmosphere at the arcades. And according to legend, the design for the titular character came from inspiration when Iwatani was out to lunch and saw a pizza with a slice taken out of it. And so a little over a year later, in 1980, Pac-Man hit the arcades and was a big commercial success, solidifying Pac-Man's place in video game history. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the ghosts, and most of you probably know that if you wait on this screen here, you can actually see their names. The red one is Blinky, the pink one is Pinky, the blue one is Inky, and the orange one is Clyde. Now, the ghosts don't just randomly move about the map. They actually have different behaviors. So all of the ghosts have two different phases in which they can be in: chase and scatter. And right now, Blinky and Pinky were just in scatter mode. You saw there they were moving around in the corners of the map. Now they are actively in chase mode, where they're actually going after Pac-Man himself. Now let's talk about the way that the ghosts move. Now this is overly simplified. You could go into way more depth about how the ghosts actually move around and pursue Pac-Man. But basically they're going from tile to tile, which I'll show on the screen what that would look like to them. And they're all picking a different target to go after. Blinky's the most straightforward. Blinky's just seeking Pac-Man himself. He's always targeting down Pac-Man. Pinky, on the other hand, is always targeting for places in front of Pac-Man. The way that Inky targets Pac-Man is the most complex of them all, and I think the easiest way to describe it is that Inky looks for a spot 2 spaces in front of Pac-Man. Then he looks at where Blinky is on the map, and he calculates the distance between Blinky and that point 2 spaces in front of Pac-Man. Then he just doubles that, and that point right there is where Inky is heading. And that leaves us with Clyde. Now, Clyde is different than everybody else. He does target Pac-Man at first, the same way that Blinky does, but if he gets less than 8 spaces away from Pac-Man, then he actually changes his target to the same target that he uses when he is scattering. So sometimes he appears to almost flee from Pac-Man. Now again, I've simplified this down quite a bit just to make it easier to explain, but there's a great video by Retro Game Mechanics that goes in depth about how the Ghosts AI actually works if you want to learn more about that. Now, because we understand how the ghosts move, there are a number of patterns that you can memorize to help get yourself through the maze and complete the level successfully. One pattern that I think is great to start with and is pretty easy to memorize is the Procyon pattern. Now this pattern gets you through the entire lower half of the level, and then you just have to complete that top half with the 2 corners however you want. Now as you go on and continue through the levels, you'll have to make some little tweaks and adjustments to this pattern on the fly, just so you can avoid the ghosts. But overall, it's a great start, and I've used it for a little while now, and it has helped me clear the levels a lot easier. There's also a little spot where you can actually hide out and none of the ghosts can get you. Now you have to make sure you get the ghosts stuck in these loop cycles, but if you do so successfully, nobody can touch you. Alright, so I've kind of lured them over to the bottom left of the screen. And now I'm just going to stay in this spot right here, coming in from the left. Blinky is now looping around here. Pinky's looping around this square. Inky's looping around here. Clyde's looping around here. So I should be pretty safe right here. And now I can actually step back, maybe go get something to eat, take a bathroom break. This is great for if I'm trying to play Pac-Man for a very long time, especially if I'm trying to get to level 256. Now, what on earth is level 256? Well, that's actually the furthest you can get in the game. Half of the screen just completely glitches out and the level is unbeatable because there's just not enough dots generated in the maze. This is known as the kill screen. So why does the game glitch out at level 256? Well, if you know about programming, I think that that number alone should give you a little clue as to why this is happening. Basically, and again, like the ghosts, I'm simplifying this down to make it easier to explain. The game has a level counter, which displays little fruits at the bottom corner of the screen. And this level counter stores its information as 8-bit integers. And what that means is that the highest value it can store is 255. So when you reach 256, it overflows to 0, and the level counter just starts generating a bunch of random sprites and data, filling up the right side of the screen, and just making the game unbeatable. Again, there's another great video by Retro Game Mechanics Explained that goes into detail about how the kill screen of Pac-Man actually works. Pac-Man's kill screen is perhaps the most infamous of them all, but Pac-Man actually isn't the only game that has this. Donkey Kong, Galaga, Dig Dug, Duck Hunt are all examples of games that have a certain level that you can reach that from that point on it's pretty much unbeatable, just because I don't think programmers ever expected anybody to get that far. Things just kind of break down at that point. One element of Pac-Man that I'm surprised I haven't seen more people talking about are the little cutscenes that play in between certain levels. Most of us have seen the one after level 2 where Pac-Man is chasing Blinky away. But did you know that after level 5 you can see some of Blinky's cloak tear off? And after level 9 we flat out see what Blinky looks like under that red cloak. So is this saying that the ghosts aren't even ghosts at all? I feel like there's some really interesting theories you could come up with based on these cutscenes. So, that's a little bit about Pac-Man. Maybe some facts and information that you never knew before. I know there were several that I didn't know before I did research. And now that you know how the ghosts work, next time you're at an arcade with your friends, if you memorize one of those patterns, you can impress them and make them think, wow, he is really good at Pac-Man. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you stopping by, and I'll see you in the next video.